Hi everybody, welcome back to Chrysalis Books. My name is Jessica. I write the blog Lady Lovestead. I also manage the Lovestead, which is my urban homestead. Welcome to my channel. Today's video, I'm going to challenge you to do something. Every time I say the word series, mark it down, and however many times I've said the word series, you want to have $1 for every series, and I want you to spend however much is left at the end of this video on a new book. Today's video is the start of my series review series. In these videos, what I'll be doing is walking you through book by book a review of a particular series of books. I really like book series because it gives you the chance to get to know the characters at a whole new level when you've spent multiple books with them. The way that this will work is I will be reading 3 series at a time, and each video will tackle one book in the series. So we'll be talking about 3 different books from 3 different series in each video. I hope that's making sense. Are you counting? The series that I'm going to start with here in this first video is the Mercy Thompson series by Patricia Briggs, the Rizzoli and Isles series by Tess Gerritsen, and the Twilight series by Stephanie Meyer. So what we'll do here today is go through the first book in each of these series, and then next month we'll go through book 2. Now, because some of these book series will be shorter than others, we'll be able to start a new series, while we're making our way through this series. So the Mercy Thompson series and the Rizzoli and Isles series are a bit longer in that they have more books to be reviewed. But this one is shorter, and so we'll finish this up pretty quickly and then be able to start a new one. And so if there's a book series that you really enjoy that you would like me to review as part of this video collection, please let me know in the comments down below when we get close to the end of one of the series. You should have quite a few dollars at this point. Okay, let's start with our first book. So Moon Called by Patricia Briggs is the first book in the Mercy Thompson series. This book does what every beginning series book does, and it really sets up the characters and the world building for you in pretty great detail. Patricia Briggs does a nice job of world building, and her worlds are really interesting to me, particularly this one, because Mercy in this book is the main protagonist, and she is actually a Christian, but she lives in a world of like vampires and werewolves. And so Patricia Briggs is telling this story where these supernatural creatures exist within a Christian worldview, which I find really, really interesting. So Mercy is our main character, and Mercy is a Volkswagen mechanic by day and what's called a skinwalker by night. She's basically a shapeshifter in that she can shift into a coyote. And she's not called by the moon, so she doesn't have to wait for a full moon to change her shape-shifting or anything like that. Mercy was raised by a pack of werewolves, and in this universe, the werewolves are not yet out to the public, but fairies are. So the fairies came out to the public as supernatural beings, and now the fairies ended up like Native Americans in the United States in that they live on Fae reservations. And so there are other supernatural beings. There are werewolves and vampires in this book, along with the Fae, but the vampires and the werewolves are not yet out to the public because of how poorly received the fairies were when they came out to the public. And then obviously Mercy is a skinwalker, a shapeshifter, but the way that it's written, it makes it sound like she might be the only shapeshifter skinwalker left on the planet. We'll see if that turns out the way that I think it might. But basically, Mercy lives in a single wide mobile home in front of or adjacent to her neighbor, which is Adam Hauptmann. And Adam Hauptmann is the local werewolf alpha, meaning that he's like the head of the local werewolf pack. And there's a lot of tension between Adam and Mercy. He actually claims her as his mate so that the other werewolves don't get territorial or weird about her living so close to the pack. So with the pack, there's a lot of like pack rules, a lot of like dominance and subordination, and a lot of hierarchies. And Mercy talks a lot about how those are like super old-fashioned and patriarchal. So if you're someone who's sensitive to that kind of thing, you might not like this so much, but it's not like, I mean, it's overt in that she says like, yeah, this is stupid and patriarchal. But Patricia Briggs isn't promoting that as the way to be. She's saying like, this is kind of gross and we wish people didn't behave this way, kind of thing. So it wasn't enough to turn me off of the book. The premise of this book is that there is a new werewolf in town, and they learn some things about him that are a bit troubling, and then Adam Hauptmann's daughter, Jessie, goes missing. So then there's this big adventure trying to find her and this new werewolf, and figure out where he came from, how he's connected to it. And I won't give you any spoilers, but it's a pretty decent story. You know, like I said, with the first in a series, it really just set up like the main characters and stuff, but the actual plot in this is pretty decent. It's pretty action-packed. There's some sexual tension between Mercy and Hauptmann, and she also reconnects with an old flame. So then there's like this love triangle that's happening, which is always really interesting. And just getting to know the characters and the world building was really cool. And it does set up the series really nicely. In that you already get a good sense of what this universe is like, who the main players are, and what kinds of shenanigans they get into. So I gave this book a solid 3 stars out of 5, and yeah, overall, a good start. Okay, the next series that we'll be reading is Rizzoli and Isles by Tess Gerritsen. This is my favorite like murder mystery series. I think Tess Gerritsen is such a brilliant writer. The first book in the Rizzoli and Isles series is The Surgeon, and when I read this, I don't think that Gerritsen actually meant to make this a series, because this book is pretty much a good standalone. And actually, Maura Isles isn't even in it. So the main characters in this are Tom, oh, I gotta look at my notes because I'm thinking about Moon Called. Thomas More, Catherine Cordell, and Jane Rizzoli. So Jane Rizzoli's in it, and that gets that established. But it's interesting because in future books, Thomas More is not in them, and neither is Catherine Cordell. So I do think that she meant this to be a standalone and not to be something that spun out into a series. But it's a good standalone. It's about this serial killer who goes by the Surgeon, who does really terrible things, which I won't get into. If you are sensitive to sexual violence or like grossly detailed violence, like not the book for you. One of the things that he does is he actually cuts out his victim's uterus. Like, this guy is violent, like he is evil incarnate, and he hates women. And so Rizzoli and Thomas More are trying to find him. Catherine Cordell is this guy's next target. And so Catherine Cordell is a really big player in this story. Tess Gerritsen really talks a lot about sexual assault and the psychological ramifications of Woo! The long-term psychological ramifications. Tess Gerritsen talks a lot about sexual assault in this book, and in particular the long-term ramifications that sexual assault has on a person's psyche. So, yeah, like I said, if you're sensitive to that, nix this book. Don't read this one. But it is a good book. Like I said, it doesn't really set the series up, because some of the main characters are missing. Some of the main characters in this book don't come back in the next book. So it's interesting in that it sort of sets the stage for the surgeon, which is an important character for the next book in the series, and we get to know Jane Rizzoli. But outside of that, it really is just like a standalone book. It's a good book. I gave it 3 stars out of 5, and with that caveat that if you're sensitive to sexual violence and graphic violence in a book, don't read it. Okay, that brings us to the last book in this series, which is Twilight. I am reviewing the Twilight books again in preparation for reading Midnight Sun, which just came out in August of 2020. So I started at the very beginning, and there are a couple of filler books in this series that I never read the first time. Like, I didn't read Life and Death, Twilight Reimagined, and I didn't read The Brief Second Life of whatever her name is. that little baby vampire. So I will read those filler books as I read through this series again this time too. And that'll be my first time reading those. It is my second time reading Twilight. So Twilight is the first book in the Twilight series, and most people on the planet already know what it's about, but it's about Bella, who moves to Forks, Washington to live with her father after her mother remarries, and she marries a baseball player who travels a lot. And so Bella wants her mom to be able to just like be happy and be with this baseball player, and so she goes to spend the rest of her high school days in Forks, Washington. While she's in Forks, Washington, she meets Edward and the Cullens, who are vampires. And this first book is all about her learning that the Cullens are vampires and learning what their universe is like. And she falls in love with him. And yes, their relationship is kind of gross because Edward is controlling and Bella is obsessive. And so, no, it's not a stellar example of a healthy relationship. But art imitates life, and in life there are relationships like this. I like Twilight. I think Twilight taps into some of our inner desires that we don't really want to acknowledge. Like, some people do desire an obsessive kind of love like that. With the vampires, that taps into our inner desire to be like powerful and to live forever and to have all the things materially. So I think that Stephanie Meyer really has a talent for kind of tapping into those deep hidden desires that we don't like to acknowledge that we have, but that we can then express through reading her books. So I do give Twilight 3 stars out of 5, fully acknowledging that the relationship is unhealthy, but with the caveat that, hey, like, art imitates life, and in life there are unhealthy relationships. And so I don't think that every book ever written has to be 100% PC, because that, like, who's gonna create art if all art has to be PC all the time? You know, that's kind of where I stand on that. You know, and if you have a young girl who reads this and is like, oh, I love the relationship, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to ban the books. Like, that opens up the opportunity to have a conversation with your child about what is a healthy relationship, why this isn't healthy, why, yeah, you can still enjoy this, but you don't want to model your life after it. All right, so those are the first 3 books in my series review. And next time we will read the second books in the series that we're reading right now, which is the Mercy Thompson series by Patricia Briggs, the Rizzoli and Isles series by Tess Gerritsen, and Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. If you enjoy this, stick around next month. I'll be reading the next couple of books. We'll go through them. And until next time, make sure that you continue to read good books yourself, drink good coffee, take care of yourselves and each other. Bye!